Good morning and welcome. Would you please join with me in singing number 1018, Come and Go With Me, number 1018. Come and go with me to that land, come and go with me to that land, come and go with me to that land, where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land, come and go with me to that land, come and go with me to that land, where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land, there'll be freedom in that land, there'll be freedom in that land, where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land, there'll be freedom in that land, there'll be freedom in that land, where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. 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 Where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. Where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. 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 Where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. Where I'm bound. Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor. I'm Carter Smith, and I have the pleasure of serving this congregation as the Acting Director of Music Ministries. Welcome to this abbreviated and all-virtual service that precedes our winter congregational meeting. We are joined this morning in worship by Reverend Manish Mishra-Marzetti, our senior minister, Stella Anderson, our Director of Spiritual Growth and Development, Allison Halerz, our Pianist-in-Residence, Mike Halerz, our technological consultant, and members of our Chalice singers to help provide the music for this service. Our service this morning will be immediately followed by our winter congregational meeting. This business meeting will be available on the same Zoom meeting which you are viewing right now. If you are new to our congregation or have never attended a congregational meeting, please know that all are welcomed and encouraged to attend the meeting. Should any votes be called during the meeting, only members of the congregation present will be able to vote. And now, as we enter our time of worship this morning, and we prepare our hearts and minds to discuss the important work of our congregation, I would like to offer these words of wisdom from Reverend Sherry Woodbury, titled, In Our Circle Again. Here we are in our circle again, a circle of vision and reflection, a forum for deciding and empowering. Here we are at the base of another bridge, another space spanning the shores of today and tomorrow, beckoning us to cross the chasm one day at a time. Here we are gathered again at the cusp of the future, at the boundary that holds community together. Here we are in a circle of love and trust, brought to this moment by a series of choices and promises, by hope and gratitude, by our own shadows faced and befriended. with a servant's heart and a leader's listening, with a parent's love truer than all our inner trembling. Let us model the health we seek for all and lean into community. Somewhere out there, all we dream is possible. Somewhere in here, we are sowing the seeds. We are gathered for worship.
One of the ways that we begin our time together each week is by lighting our chalice. Our chalice is a reminder of our connections to one another in this community, our connections to Unitarian Universalists all over the world, and our connections to our living tradition. To help us light our chalice here in Ann Arbor, I'd like to invite Reverend Manish Mishra-Marzetti. As he kindles our sacred flame, please join me wherever you are in repeating our chalice lighting words. We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. Another way that we begin our time together is by repeating the words of our covenant. As Unitarian Universalists, we are not bound together by one single creed, but by our covenant, which are the promises we make about how we will be together. So whether you know these words by heart or whether you're saying them for the first time, please join me as we say, "The spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth in love, and to help one another." Community is built on relationships, and relationships are built on trust and mutuality, on the covenant we make to give of ourselves and to ask for what we need. Sometimes we take more than we are able to give, and sometimes we have the capacity to give more than we take. And it works because we trust that as our needs shift and evolve over time, our friends and loved ones will be there for us and with us to support and nurture us, just as we are in any given moment. It is the promise of community that we care for and tend to one another. Our story for all ages celebrates this essential truth. Thank you, Amu, written and illustrated by Oji Mora. On the corner of First Street and Long Street, on the very top floor, Amu was cooking a thick red stew in a big fat pot for a nice evening meal. She seasoned and stirred it and took a small taste. "What a delicious stew," Amu said. "Tonight's dinner will surely be the best I have ever had." With that, Amu put down her spoon and went to read a book before summer. As the thick red stew simmered on the stove, its scrumptious scent wafted out the window and out the door, down the hall, toward the street, and around the block until someone was at the door. When Amu opened it, she saw a little boy. "Little boy," Amu exclaimed, "what brings you to my home?" "I was playing with my race car down the hall when I smelled the most delicious smell," the little boy replied. "What is it?" "Thick red stew." Stew," he sighed. "That sure sounds yummy." Amu thought for a moment. She was saving her stew for dinner, but she had made quite a bit. It would not hurt to share. "Would you like some?" The little boy nodded. And so Amu spooned out some thick red stew from the big fat pot for her nice evening meal. "Thank you, Amu," the little boy said, and went on his way. With that, Amu closed the door and went back to her book. As she read, her thick red stew's scrumptious scent wafted out the window and out the door, down the hall, toward the street, and around the block until someone was at the door. When Amu opened the door, this time she saw a police officer. "Ms. Police Officer," Amu exclaimed, "what brings you to my home?" "I was on duty down the street when I smelled the most delicious smell," Ms. Police Officer replied. "What is it?" "Thick red stew." "Ah, stew," she said, and her mouth watered. "That sounds mighty tasty." Amu thought for a moment. There was still enough to share. "Would you like some?" The police officer nodded. Once again, Amu spooned out some thick red stew from the big fat pot for her nice evening meal. "Thank you, Amu," the officer said, and went on her way. And so, for the second time, Amu closed the door and went back to her book. Sure enough, as she read, her thick red stew's scrumptious scent wafted out the window and out the door, down the hall, toward the street, and around the block until again, someone was at Amu's door. This time, when she opened it, she saw a hot dog vendor. "Mr. Hot Dog Vendor," Amu exclaimed, "what brings you to my home?" "I was selling my hot dogs down the block when I smelled the most delicious smell," Mr. Hot Dog Vendor replied. "What is it?" "Thick red stew." "Ooh, stew," the vendor licked his lips. "That sounds quite delectable." So, Amu spooned out some thick red stew from the big fat pot for her nice evening meal. "Thank you, Amu," the hot dog vendor said, and went on his way. Throughout the day, people from all across the neighborhood knocked on Amu's door. She fed a shop owner, a cab driver, a doctor, an actor, a lawyer, a dancer, a baker, an artist, a singer, an athlete, a bus driver, a construction worker. Even the mayor stopped by. And each time they knocked, Amu shared. Soon the sky darkened, the street lights brightened, and it was finally time for dinner. But when Amu opened her big fat pot of thick red stew for her nice evening meal, it was empty. Amu sniffled. "There goes the best dinner I ever had." Sorry and blue, she sat at the table with her empty pot until who could that be, Amu wondered. When she opened her door, she saw the little boy, the police officer, the hot dog vendor, the shop owner, the cab driver, the doctor, the actor, the lawyer, the dancer, the baker. Why, everyone she fed today was at her door. "I'm sorry, everyone," Amu sighed. "My thick red stew is all gone. I have nothing left to share." The little boy tugged at Amu's sleeve. "Don't worry, Amu. We are not here to ask. We are here to give." The police officer carried in fresh salad. The mayor entered with a roast chicken. The baker brought a collection of sweet goodies. Even the little boy presented Amu with something special in a shiny red envelope. Everyone who had knocked on Amu's door that day squeezed inside her tiny apartment, and together they ate, danced, and celebrated. While Amu's big fat pot of thick red stew was empty, her heart was full of happiness and love. That dinner was the best she had ever had. Thank you, Amu. The end.
Thank you, Stella. A beautiful story about the ways in which we can create community from a space of generosity and caring in our hearts. As I was reflecting on today being a congregational meeting Sunday, an important time of gathering for the community in the spirit of community, in the spirit of love and mutual care, I was drawn to the work of Mark Nepo. Some of you might recall that our community just hosted him less than a year ago, February of last year. He was with us. One of his books from 2018 is specifically on the theme of community and community building. It's called More Together Than Alone. And in one of the chapters in this book, Mark engages in a dialogue with the historian Howard Zinn, posing the question to Howard Zinn, are there examples, historical examples of times when people have come together in a really good way, when they've shown up in the right heart space and doing the right things from a place of generosity and mutual care, even if it was fleeting, even if it didn't endure? And Howard Zinn responds with a really beautiful and poignant example. He refers Mark Nepo to a time in the history of France in 1871. Franco-Prussian War had been raging for some time. And in the spring of 1871, in March, the French had faced huge losses to the Prussians. Huge, dramatic and painful losses. In the middle of that, the French National Guard takes over the city of Paris, and they establish an experiment called the French Commune, or the Commune of Paris. It's known in a couple of different ways. And the point of this Commune of Paris was to hold as many of the French people and Parisians together in the very best ideals of community. And they were blockaded. They were basically trapped in the city of Paris. And they wanted the other people of France who might have been under Prussian control to know what they were doing and to invite them into this grand experiment, this commune. They launched hot air balloons, something like 69 hot air balloons, and with leaflets that they were dropping as the balloons went across the French countryside. Now, for those who know about hot air balloons, there's no way to control the navigation. Some of the balloons went way off course, wound up even as far as Norway, Belgium, Holland. I mean, they were scattered. But a handful of the balloons were able to fulfill their original intention. And in dropping these leaflets, there was just one phrase on the leaflet. It said, "Our interests are the same." And knowing that the hot air balloons would maybe work, maybe not work, just as happened, they also launched carrier pigeons, over 300 carrier pigeons. Only about 60 of them actually reached anywhere meaningful. And tied to the legs of the carrier pigeons, the same message: our interests are the same. The invitation being, join us, be one with us in community, in intent. Howard Zinn says of this is the most important message we can offer one another, that we are all human beings, that our interests are the same. Our problem is to discern which interests have been artificially drummed into us, like the interest of accumulating a lot of money, or the interest of being a stronger country than any other nation or state, or even the interest of being more beautiful than another person. These false, artificial interests have been inculcated. I can't think of anything more important to do, Howard Zinn says, than to be able to resist these false interests and to declare our common interests. this experiment of the Commune of Paris, it only lasted 2 months. Started in March 1871, and it was disappeared by the end of May of 1871. And yet that spirit, that intention, that dream of building that kind of community grounded in common interests has permeated other historical attempts at pulling people together in really good and meaningful ways, including here in our community, which has been around since 1865 with exactly that kind of intention. Do we always hit the mark? Do we always get it just right? Of course we don't. We're human. We get things wrong. We stumble. We miss the mark sometimes. And yet the intention is always there to show up in a spirit of love, in a deep spirit of mutual respect, mutual care, always with the notion, always with the goal, always with the hope of furthering what we can do together, which can always be greater than what any one of us can do alone. It's in that spirit I invite us to gather this morning for our congregational meeting and hold that thought, that intention in our hearts.
I invite you to join us in singing our closing hymn this morning, number 131, Love Will Guide Us, number 131.
Dear ones, as we now move into our congregational meeting, remember that we are a beloved community, a people of faith and action, in covenant with one another. Trust in yourselves that you have much to offer. Trust in all of us, a community committed to goodness and bringing the spirit of love alive in the world. As we extinguish this chalice, and then gather to do the work of community, hold on to the love that can nurture us and guide us in all that we do and say. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.